Have you ever felt the chill of being watched? The unease of something lurking just beyond the shadows? Tonight, we're taking you to one of America's most haunted places, the Moundsville Penitentiary. This isn't just an old prison, it's a place with a history drenched in violence, death, and the unexplained. 94 executions, 36 inmate murders, and countless dark secrets buried within its walls. People who visit report cold spots, eerie voices, and sightings of the infamous Shadow Man. So, are you ready to step inside? Because once the gates close, there's no turning back. The night was thick with fog, wrapping the old Moundsville Penitentiary like a ghostly shroud. Emma and her friends stood at the iron gates, staring up at the massive, crumbling structure. The place looked like it had been pulled straight out of a nightmare. "Are you guys sure about this?" one of them asked nervously. Emma laughed, but her voice wavered. "It's just a Halloween attraction. It'll be fun," she said, trying to sound confident. She didn't believe in ghost stories, or at least that's what she told herself. The gates creaked open, groaning as if protesting their presence. As the group stepped inside, the air turned colder, heavier. The faint scent of damp stone and rust filled their noses. Emma glanced over her shoulder. For a moment, she thought she saw movement in the shadows. But there was nothing there. Their guide, an older man with sunken eyes and a gravelly voice, greeted them. "Welcome to Moundsville Penitentiary," he said, his tone low and serious. This place once held the worst of the worst. 94 men were executed here, and 36 were murdered by their own kind. Some say their souls are still trapped within these walls. Emma smirked, but goosebumps prickled her skin. They followed the guide through the first hallway. It was dark, damp, and eerily quiet, except for the echo of their footsteps. When they reached the north wagon gate, the guide stopped. His voice softened. This is where public hangings took place. People would gather outside, cheering, jeering, watching men take their final breath. A cold breeze swept past Emma, making her shiver. She frowned. The windows were sealed. "Did anyone else feel that?" she whispered. But no one answered. The guide pointed to a shadowy corner. "That's where Lanzi War was ambushed in 1929, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "He was butchered by other inmates, stabbed, hacked to pieces. They say he still roams this place, looking for justice or revenge." The group murmured nervously. Emma's friend Jake rolled his eyes. "It's just a story," he muttered. But even he seemed uneasy now. As they moved deeper into the prison, the guide led them to a dark cell block. "This is where the 1986 riot happened. 3 men were killed right here," he said. "The energy from that night never left. The shadows in this place, they don't belong to you. They belong to them." Emma's chest tightened. The air felt suffocating, as if the walls were closing in. Next, they entered the Sugar Shack, the recreation area. The guide explained that it was a place of violence, fights, stabbings, and worse. As Emma walked through, something brushed against her arm. It was cold, sharp, and unmistakable. She spun around. "Who touched me?" she asked, her voice shaking. Jake shrugged, but Emma noticed he was sticking closer to the group now. Finally, they reached the hallway leading to the execution chamber. The guide stopped abruptly and pointed ahead. "This," he said grimly, "is where the shadow man has been seen. He doesn't like visitors." Emma let out a nervous laugh. "The shadow man, really?" she said, trying to sound brave. But then she saw it. At the end of the hallway, a tall, dark figure stood motionless. It wasn't a man. It was a void. No face, no features, just a black shape that seemed to swallow the dim light around it. Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Do you see that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her friends turned to look, but by then, the figure had vanished. The tour ended soon after. Emma couldn't wait to leave. As they stepped back into the cold night air, the guide gave her a strange smile. "Not everyone sees the shadow man," he said. "Consider yourself lucky." That night, Emma couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the dark figure standing at the foot of her bed, its emptiness staring back at her. The next morning, she felt a sting on her arm. When she looked, her blood ran cold. There, on her skin, was a faint bruise, shaped like a hand. It was exactly where she had felt the touch in the sugar shack. Emma never returned to Moundsville. Some places, she realized, don't let you leave without leaving a mark.